watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Despite orders from the Supreme Court, India's cricket board, the BCCI, has openly and brazenly defied it and refused to undertake key administrative reforms for greater transparency. And so today, a panel that had been set up by the Supreme Court has said that the board should be sacked for non-compliance, including its president Anurag Thakur and secretary Ajay Shirke. In some scathing words today, the Supreme Court said the BCCI had to fall in line or otherwise they would be made to fall in line. The reforms suggested by the court-appointed Lodha panel have far-reaching implications for the way Indian cricket is run. But the board, which is dominated by powerful politicians and administrators, is simply not listening.
Are you a law unto yourself? Does the BCCI think it can violate our orders and get away with it? Fall in line, otherwise we will pass orders. The Chief Justice of India firmly reprimanding India's Board of Cricket. His words come after the court-appointed Justice Lodha panel submitted a report saying the BCCI was blatantly ignoring its recommendations on reform. The Lodha panel had made it very clear to the BCCI that they can only take administrative decisions if they accepted their recommendations. But the BCCI disregarded their directives and went ahead with the appointment of selection committees, Ajay Shirke as the secretary, and several other decisions at their AGM on the 21st of this month. And now the panel has hit back hard. The panel has requested the Supreme Court to remove the BCCI top bosses like President Anurag Thakur. The panel has asked for a team of administrators to be appointed to oversee the implementation of the recommendations. The Lodha panel has also asked the Supreme Court to overturn all decisions taken by the BCCI in their AGM, like the appointment of junior and senior selectors. They have in fact said that any decision post the 18th of July that is against their recommendations should be made ineffective. To date, the BCCI has disregarded as many as 6 deadlines set for them to comply. The last deadline runs out on the 30th of September.
We have submitted the report as we found that there were impediments in implementation of the recommendations as approved by the Supreme Court. And one of the options given by the Supreme Court to the committee was that should there be any impediment in implementation of the recommendations, the same may be brought to the notice of the court by submitting the status report. We have chosen that route.
I think the BCCI finds itself in a difficult spot, but I think we all have to accept that at the end of the day, the Supreme Court is the final authority. So the BCCI will just have to wait and see what the Supreme Court decides in the first week of October.
The BCCI refused to speak on camera, but the Secretary has told NDTV whatever we have done is in the interest of the BCCI.
Despite the BCCI's reluctance, they will have to think of a reasonable explanation why it defied the recommendations when the Supreme Court hears the case on the 6th of October. In New Delhi, with Rika Roy, this is Arunachalam Vaidyanathan, NDTV.
Well, we have Mr. Sunil Gavaskar joining us now via Skype. Mr. Gavaskar, thank you for speaking to us on what is a big day once again as far as Indian cricket is concerned. What are your first thoughts on what the Supreme Court has said today? It had some rather scathing words for the Indian Cricket Board, saying it's become a law unto itself, it needs to fall in line, or that it would be made to fall in line, and that the conduct of the board is in poor taste for defying the court's orders.
Well, I think those are really strong words, and clearly, I think the Supreme Court has been riled to say that, and I think it was probably the recent annual general meeting where certain decisions taken by the BCCI hasn't gone down well with the panel as well as the Supreme Court. I think that is pretty obvious.
Mr. Gavaskar, you yourself, have said that you felt that many of the recommendations of the Lodha committee were very harsh. Having said that, you have a Supreme Court order that is in place. Do you think the BCCI has handled this badly by defying the court in the way that it has?
Well, I think once a court and the Supreme Court gives you an order, I think it's to be followed by the mightiest in the land. And I think the perception clearly is that by holding the AGM and making some appointments, particularly to the selection committees for 2016-17, I think clearly the BCCI has not listened to what the panel had suggested, which was to conduct business which pertained to the annual year, to the year 2015 to 2016. So I suppose it's no surprise then that the Supreme Court has got upset and come down heavily on the BCCI.
If you could share with us, though, the reservations that you had about some of the recommendations, and if you could explain to us why you felt that some of the recommendations were too harsh and in fact would hurt Indian cricket.
Well, I think my main thing was about the one state, one vote thing, because for years from the inception of the board, there have been founding members, and while I understand that the Cricket Club of India and the National Cricket Club, which do not participate in the Ranji Trophy, are not given a vote. I understand that, but they've been founding members. But I think for me, the most important thing has been the fact that by that one state, one vote, you are having states which are not currently playing Ranji Trophy, or even union territories which are not playing Ranji Trophy. You are asking them to play Ranji Trophy. Now, in England as well, not every single county plays in the English County Championships. In Australia, not every state in Australia plays in the Australian First Class Championship. There is a minor counties championship for in England, and I think when you do well at the junior level, then you get promoted to Ranji Trophy, which is what has happened with Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh did well at the junior level, and then they came up to the Ranji Trophy. If you allow every state to come in the Ranji Trophy, then you will dilute the standard of Indian cricket, first-class cricket. And from first-class cricket is what you pick your international player. As it is, there are some states in India currently playing Ranji Trophy who really do not have a strong enough team. But if you add more states to that, then I think that the standard is going to be diluted. So that was my main.
But having said that, Mr. Gavaskar, I'm sure you would admit that the way the cricket board is functioning right now is problematic, isn't it? Because there isn't enough transparency. That's what has led to this, entire panel being set up, the Supreme Court order subsequently. You would concede that something needs to change?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there is no organization in the world where, there is no, you can say that there is no room for improvement. There's room for improvement in every organization. There's room for improvement in every single individual as well. So yes, I think there is definitely room for improvement. And I think it's something that, the BCCI needs to have a look at as to the areas that they need to improve on. The panel has suggested certain things, and I think there are many things in the recommendations which I think are very, very good for future administration of the game. But I think the one state, one vote. I'm not really concerned about the vote. I'm concerned about allowing the states which are not playing Ranji Trophy at the moment a direct entry into the Ranji Trophy, because that, for me, as far as the cricketing standard is concerned, the cricketing standard will come down. That's my only worry. Whether then you give one state one vote.
The biggest criticism of the board is that it's become very entrenched by politicians, administrators who want to protect their turfs. Now that is how the board is looked at today, and that is why they're going as far as defying even the Supreme Court.
No, I think, where the recommendations have come through, they are also giving the cricketers the vote. And I think that's the way it should also be. You can have your secretaries of the various clubs voting for at the state level. But I think former cricketers, former first-class umpires from that particular state, I think they should also have a say in who should be the administrators. Then eventually, if whoever wants to be an administrator can be an administrator. As long as, the former cricketers and the, cricketers who represented India do have a vote in that, then it doesn't matter who contests the election, because then you'll say that the cricketers have voted for a politician, an industrialist, a former cricketer, or, just,
You don't think the time has come to delink politicians from running sport and from running the cricket board in particular? That would be radical, but you don't think the time has come to do that?
I think, why are we singling out, one class of people? I mean, are we trying to say that non-politicians will run the board efficiently? I think it's a question
of... What do politicians know about playing cricket? Shouldn't it be cricketers or sports persons?
Well, then technically you can also ask what do politicians know about, say, running some of the ministries which they are given? What is the expertise that those people who are made ministers? What's the expertise that they have in running whatever ministries that they have? So I mean, we can go on that way about questioning everything. I mean, look, the only class of people who know everything about everything is the media. Nobody else. Because media is the expert.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, media is the only expert on everything. Media is experts on politics, on sports, on religion.
So why shouldn't politicians be experts on sports as well? Well, I think there are serious questions though about the conduct of the board, and as you said yourself at the beginning, once a Supreme Court order had come, it should have been respected, and in that sense I think the BCCI has a tough message it has got from the Supreme Court today on getting its act together. Mr. Gavaskar, thank you very much for taking out your time and speaking to us. Thank you. Well, joining us first on the program tonight, we have former cricketer Kirti Azad. Also with us tonight, Pradeep Magazine and Kishore Bhimani, two eminent sports writers. And Kirti Azad, coming to you first, your thoughts today, because you've been fighting for greater transparency in the way cricket is run in this country. But does it even surprise you the extent to which the BCCI has gone not to undertake these reforms?
Well, I'm not surprised at all that they got a slap on their knuckles for a simple reason that they think they're above the law of the land, and this is what exactly the Honorable Supreme Court said. Go into your archives, you'll find that. I told them, I have been saying this, you'll again find it in the archives, that United Alliance, United in Corruption, Alliances for Positions, where there are principled stands, they make it personal. They thought they could hoodwink governments that were there. Why? Because they had politicians from each and every party. Now they've been slapped on their knuckles by the Honorable Supreme Court, which I think is the right thing to do. After all, it's for the betterment of the game. It has got a very bad name. We have got some great best cricketers in the past and in the current team, and unfortunately, the way these people have acted, they have manipulated, used, misused and abused government machinery. They thought that they could do that because they have political clout and they have their godfathers behind them. But unfortunately, they could not succeed. And this is what they wanted, and this is what they've got.
Well, Kishore Bhimani, does it surprise you, though Kirti Azad says he's not surprised, but the extent to which the Supreme Court's orders have been ignored on this, have been set aside, have been defied, frankly, so brazenly by the Indian Cricket Board? Do you think that the time has come for this entire board to be sacked? Do you think it will happen?
Well, first of all, Nidhi, in reply to your question, no, I'm not surprised. I agree with Kirti. This was coming. But the point was, they had such a long time to think over it. They took the attitude that with the diversionary tactics of bringing in Justice Markandeya Karchu, of delaying things, of talking about review petitions and curative petitions, and delay, which was a lovely way they thought that people would forget about it. Fortunately, the Honorable Supreme Court and the court-appointed justices, former justices, like Lodha, have not forgotten. They are men of principle who have gone deep into the malaise that afflicts the BCCI. I wonder why it's called the BCCI, Board of Control for Cricket in India. When you introduced it, you called it the Indian Cricket Board. I wish it were called that. The point is, they thought that these 3 or 4 very serious amendments suggested by the honorable judges was of no importance. And they discussed, and the Lodha Commission, Nidhi, if you remember, were very forthcoming, and they relaxed the rule about advertisements. There was a feeling that if there was no ads in between overs and things like that, there would be a lot of loss to broadcasters, to the telecasters, to the commentators, to the general public. And they took the view that, okay, we'll withdraw that. Now, over the current issue on which this has been triggered is the 2 issues of 5 selectors and of not doing anything for the coming year. They went ahead, defied their justices, and they appointed Ajay Shirke for the following term. This was an act of defiance. It was outright defiance. We are going to do it, we'll see what you can do. And the fact that after Sandeep Patil's board of selectors
That's
was
right.
removed, the new board came in. Just to wrap it up in one sentence, they had said not 5 selectors but 3. They insisted on the 5 selectors and went ahead and appointed them in spite of the Supreme Court ruling.
The question then, Pradeep Magazine, is you at the time that the Supreme Court had ordered the Lodha Commission's recommendations or key recommendations to be implemented, you had said it's a landmark judgment. It would have far-reaching implications, as you put it, which would go beyond just the cricket administration in India. Having said that, what do you think it's going to take now to get the BCCI to listen to what the court has to say? And what about some of the issues that cricketers like Sunil Gavaskar and Kapil Dev have raised? They believe that some of the recommendations are too harsh, they go too far. Is there some validity in what they're saying?
Look, whatever validity there was or was not was settled by the judgment itself, because the board lawyers fought over it for a few months. They put their views across to Justice Thakur's bench. They contested a lot of these recommendations, and Justice Thakur said nothing doing. Almost in toto, it said that the recommendation should be implemented, except for a couple of points which Kishore raised. Now, see, frankly, not being surprised, yes, I am not surprised, but I am still surprised that how could a board defy a Supreme Court judgment, which I don't think has happened in this land. A. B. They called the Chief Justice of India biased. See, if you look at what Lodha's status report, it mentions a lot of these speeches or utterances which the board and even former Justice Karchu has said about judges. He has almost called them jokers. He has said the judgment is biased. So there is a contempt in the status report itself. Justice Lodha says that why contempt should not be filed against some of them, and then it goes on to add that the board is defiant. According to the Lodha status report, they are not willing to implement this. They refuse to acknowledge their mails. They went, every president, secretary have spoken to the press, but have not replied to Lodha's timeline, have not made any commitment to them. So this was expected. I'm still surprised that why is the board not realizing that these changes, it may affect individuals. Sure. A lot of individuals will have to go, but the board functioning will improve. So that's what they are not seeing. They're just trying to protect their personal turfs.
No, that may be the case, but Kirti Azad, it may be a Supreme Court judgment. Having said that, it's not above criticism. There are people who may have issues with it, who may think it's not entirely fair. Do you agree with any of the criticism and any of the concerns that players like Sunil Gavaskar and Kapil Dev have raised about the Lodha Committee's recommendations?
Well, with due respect to the names that you have taken, but I would like to let you know, they are like Kalidasas before they got their enlightenment. They're sitting on the branch which they are cutting. They said that the 60-year age shouldn't have been there. What if these people had said that nobody can be a commentator over the age 60? So they should actually know. It's just now, just speaking for the board, just like that, is like that fly who was very faithful to the king, and trying to take the fly away from the nose, he slashed it with the sword. So they should know what they are talking. The unfortunate part is that I find that Mr. Sunil Gavaskar and Mr. Shastri are very intelligent people. So is Kapil. But irrespective of the fact, they don't know that these things were these stipulated were by the BCCI. So they should know that what the Supreme Court is saying, what the judgment says, and what the board is saying. I mean, they were supposed to be amending their constitution. They didn't do that, which is another very serious matter. They should have done it by the 30th of September. 77 people went in front of Justice Lodha, and including me, and we went and gave our suggestions. And I'm thankful that each and every suggestion that I have suffered here in the DDCA, all those suggestions were taken. The problem is, when you make a principal stand, a personal stand, this is what happens. I had a principal stand in DDCA, and I was talking to Mr. Arun Jaitley at that time, but unfortunately he didn't listen to me and made it personal stand. But that is not the matter to be discussed now. So unfortunately, they had deliberations. They were hearing, day-to-day hearing in the Honorable Supreme Court. The senior cricketers the board members, journalists, cricket lovers, all had gotten together and had gone to Justice Lodha, and after talking to everyone, he came up with these recommendations which were approved and became as judgment. And then you turn around and say that the Chief Justice of India is a biased man. How ridiculous you can be. This is just not done. So I'm very happy they've got it.
Well, unfortunately, none of the senior members of the board, I think some of them are abroad, including Anurag, Thakur and others are just not willing to comment
sure
on this.
they're not behind bars?
And they're not willing to comment at this time. But let me ask you, Kishore Bhimani, ultimately what this tells us is that it's going to be very difficult to shake the current system of cricket administration in this country, because it's so entrenched with powerful politicians, it's so entrenched with administrators who've been around for a long time. If the Supreme Court can't shake it, what will?
No, may I put it this way? First of all, to add to what Kirti said, today the fact that you are talking about somebody, I think Pradeep mentioned that it was perhaps too harsh. Perhaps it is too harsh, but when the malaise is so deep-rooted, when it's a terrible illness which is the one that gripped the board, in which case you use a heavy antibiotic which can probably hurt some very healthy cells. That's sad, but it has to be done, and Justice Lodha has taken a holistic view. And I personally think, and with all due respect to the gentlemen who have spoken up for the board, may I ask them what they were doing at the beginning stages of this whole illness, which began with Mayappan, it began with Narayanaswamy Srinivasan, it began with all that was wrong with IPL and other things. Everyone was very quiet. Nobody said a word, Didi. And now they are saying that, oh, but they have gone too far. I don't think so, because when you have done what the board has got away with, time and again, year after year, dispensation after dispensation, what Justice Lodha has done, if you see it in its entirety, in its holistic existence, then the whole thing is that we want to revamp it. In the process of revamp, maybe there will be one or two things which need not have happened. But then you can't be selective. They gave a lot of time to the board to come to a thing. They asked for 3 months, then they asked for 6 months. They were given everything. But what they said when the Markandeya Karju issue was brought in, it was very obvious that they weren't going to listen. They were going to make a battle of it. If you make a battle, you can lose.
Well, we did ask Justice Karju if he would comment on this at all. He's told us that no, he does not wish to speak on this, which for Justice Karju is quite rare. As you know, he does normally like to comment on many things. But last word, Pradeep Magazine, then what's the way forward from here? I mean, what the next hearing on this is on the 6th of October. It really does look like the court is in no mood to give any more leeway.
Look, I think the board now should realize, I hope they have realized that this is serious. And if even now they remain defiant, I'm afraid there might be arrests ordered for contempt. And what Lodha has suggested, that you sack the entire dispensation which is running the board, have administrators appointed by the court, who under whom, with the help of the Lodha panel, these recommendations are implemented. I think that's the only way out, unless the board kind of gives in writing that, look, okay, they made a mistake, there are certain things they wanted to sort out and they are now going to do it.
All right, well, I'm going to leave it at that. Lots to talk about as far as this big story is concerned. Thank you to you all for joining us on what continues to be another controversial day in Indian cricket. Thank you. And that's it on Left, Right and Centre tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow.